You're listening to the Partisan Comms Podcast.
There is a signal broadcast every second of every day through our television sets.
Welcome to episode 16. I'm Terrence. Today we'll explore secret Cold War government programs, domestic civil disturbance plans, and a program designed to train dolphins to aid in U.S. naval operations. During the height of the Cold War, a series of secretive and ambitious projects were launched by both the United States and the Soviet Union, aiming to gain a strategic advantage in the face of potential nuclear conflict. Among these clandestine efforts, Project Iceworm stands out as an example of remarkable ingenuity conducted beneath the frozen expanse of Greenland. In the early 1960s, the United States Army began Project Iceworm with the goal of constructing a network of nuclear missile launch sites beneath Greenland's ice cap in the event of an escalation in hostilities between the superpowers. This hidden infrastructure would ensure the military's ability to strike back even if land-based missile silos in the U.S. were compromised, as the missiles launched from Greenland would be able to reach targets within the Soviet Union.
On the top of the world, below the surface of a giant ice cap, a city is buried. Today on the island of Greenland, as part of man's continuing efforts to master the secrets of survival in the Arctic, the United States Army has established an unprecedented nuclear-powered Arctic Research Center. Camp Century is buried below the surface of this ice cap. Beneath it, the ice descends for 6,000 feet. In this remote setting, less than 800 miles from the North Pole, Camp Century is a symbol of man's unceasing struggle to conquer his environment, to increase his ability to live and fight if necessary under polar conditions.
The project was kept secret for decades, and only came to light in January of 1995 when the Danish Foreign Policy Institute inquired about the history of nuclear weapons storage in Greenland. The official role of Camp Century, provided to Danish officials in the 1960s by the U.S. Department of Defense, was for the testing of construction techniques in an Arctic environment, to conduct scientific experiments and research the feasibility of a portable nuclear reactor. However, before this could become a strategic reality for the U.S. military, the infrastructure would need to be designed and built.
Our job was to cross 150 miles of ice, much of it split by crevasses, and then build a city under the ice, experimenting with new concepts of polar construction. It was several weeks later, at a point where the ice cap sloped down to a narrow strip of barren land along the coast, that our supplies began rolling in by truck for transfer to sleds. To make this transfer possible, we'd had to build a 3-mile road up onto the edge of the ice cap. We brought in everything this way: construction materials, steel arches, clothing, nails, steel beams, prefabricated houses, lumber, food, even ice cream. In the months it took to build Camp Century, more than 6,000 tons of supplies were used. Even the vehicles we used at the site had to be transported over the ice on big bobsleds. We called these convoys of 10 and 20-ton sleds heavy swings. Crawling up the ice cap at approximately 2 miles an hour, a heavy swing would reach the camp in about 70 hours if everything went well. We used wooden caboose-like trailers, wanigans, to house members of the construction crews for the 3-day trip.
Construction began in June of 1959 and was located at an elevation approximately 6,600 feet in northwestern Greenland. The complex was built underneath Greenland's ice sheet, consisting of approximately 2 miles of tunnels, which housed barracks, a hospital, a laboratory, a communications center, and a nuclear power plant designed to provide the necessary energy to sustain operations in the extreme Arctic environment. Camp Century demonstrated remarkable engineering capabilities. The tunnels were reinforced with steel and lined with wooden trusses to withstand the pressure of the ice above. However, despite the engineering accomplishments of Camp Century, the shifting ice and extreme conditions pose continuous challenges to the stability and longevity of the infrastructure. 21 trenches were cut out of the ice sheet with steel arched roof systems built over them, and water for the complex was supplied by wells drilled into the glacier, and the launch portion of the complex was approximately 28 feet below the Arctic surface.
Altogether, I had 4 other officers and a hand-picked group of 11 non-commissioned officers to help supervise the military construction crew of Camp Century. Plans for the camp had been developed months in advance. The basic concept was simple. A system of 23 trenches would be dug into the ice cap and then covered with steel arches and snow. Branching off the main communication trench would be a series of lateral trenches housing complete research, laboratory, and test facilities, modern living quarters and recreation areas, and a complex of support facilities. Since transporting great quantities of diesel fuel over vast Arctic wastes was impractical, we would install a nuclear power plant. To be absolutely certain that work was progressing properly, I held nightly construction conferences. Each of the men assigned to me was an expert in some aspect of heavy construction. We got to work immediately cutting trenches. This snow milling machine, the Peter plow, was our pride and joy. Manufactured in Switzerland, it could handle up to 1,200 cubic yards of snow an hour. Designed to clear roads in the Alps, it was ideal for our purpose, being capable of making extremely precise cuts. It was usually operated by 2 men, one controlling the machine's horizontal movement, the other controlling its vertical movement and speed. When a trench was several feet deep, planks were put down on the shoulders of the cut. Later on, these planks would be used to support the steel arch roof which would cover the trench. Every prefab that went into Camp Century had been pre-erected, tested, and then shipped to us as a unit. Every clip, every doorknob, every light switch came in a single shipment. In this way, we knew there would be no delays caused by missing parts. This is a standard T5 Engineer Arctic building, designed for cold weather use. Composed of plywood insulation panels, these buildings would provide space for comfortable working and living under the ice. Since every unit had been checked out in advance, our crews could put up one of these buildings in less than a day. As soon as the shell was completed, crews began to wire the buildings for interim power provided by diesel generators. As each unit was finished, I marked it off on the chart on my office wall. As the major interior work within each tunnel was completed, the entranceway was blocked up with bricks of snow. It took about 2 days to build one of these walls. Once in place, these bricks would bond together into a solid wall, and only a small entranceway would be left. We then used a bulldozer to push loose snow into the doorway of the tunnel to complete the seal. Later, an escape hatch would be placed at the end of a small wooden form for an emergency exit. When it was completed, the entrance was weatherproof and serviceable. One of our proudest achievements was our solution of the water problem. A steam hose with a special drilling nozzle was used to melt a hole 3.5 feet in diameter, 120 feet down into the ice cap, until a pool of water formed which did not drain off. This pool provided 10,000 gallons of fresh water daily. Throughout the camp, an extensive electrical system was now installed. For electrical heating would not only be clean, but it would also reduce the threat of fire. And fire was the worst hazard under the ice. From the very beginning, we had to take precautions against fire, or a storm closing the ramps, or any other disaster which might block the regular entrances to the camp. 16 of these escape hatches were strategically located throughout the various tunnels.
Aside from Camp Century's military objectives, it also served as a center for scientific research. Geologists conducted studies on the ice sheet, which contributed valuable insights into the dynamics of glaciers. However, the environmental impact of Project Iceworm raised concerns about potential contamination and ecological disruption due to the presence of a nuclear power plant. Despite the ambitious goals of Project Iceworm, the harsh obstacles of an Arctic environment eventually mounted. The shifting ice created structural instability, causing the tunnel network and overall infrastructure to become unstable. Additionally, advancements in intercontinental ballistic missile technology, as well as changing geopolitical priorities, contributed to a reassessment of the project. Following construction of the complex, geologists examined ice core samples and discovered the glacier was moving faster than they had previously estimated. As a result, they determined the glacier's movement would eventually destroy the tunnels and missile launch areas. The movement of the ice sheet would eventually cause the tunnels to narrow, as well as other structures within the complex to deform and eventually collapse. Eventually, the nuclear reactor was shut down for maintenance in July of 1963 and was not reactivated. The camp resumed operations relying on diesel generators. Project Iceworm was abandoned by 1966, and Camp Century was decommissioned. The remains of the base were left to be reclaimed by the harsh Arctic environment. However, it serves as a fascinating chapter in Cold War history, illustrating the lengths to which nations were willing to pursue in order to secure their strategic interests. The project's legacy lies not only in its ambitious engineering achievements, but also in the lessons learned about the challenges of operating in austere environments. Next is a government plan developed by the U.S. Department of Defense to respond to potential civil disturbances within the United States. Operation Garden Plot, officially known as the United States Civil Disturbance Plan 55-2, was a strategy developed to maintain order and support local and state authorities during times of civil unrest, ensuring the continuity of government and safeguarding national security. Operation Garden Plot was conceived during the 1960s, which was a turbulent period marked by social and political unrest. The civil rights movement, anti-Vietnam War protest, and various other movements brought millions to the streets, leading to clashes between demonstrators and law enforcement. These movements prompted the federal government to explore the need for a coordinated response to manage these large-scale events. The primary objectives of Operation Garden Plot included supporting local and state authorities in maintaining law and order, ensuring the protection of federal property and installations, safeguarding essential services and infrastructure, and aiding in restoring order and stability during times of crisis. The operation was structured to allow rapid deployment of military forces to assist civilian authorities. United States Army and National Guard units were the primary forces designated for this role, with the plan outlining specific protocols for coordination, command, and control. During the late 1960s and into the early 1970s, Operation Garden Plot was activated several times. Some examples include the response to riots in 1968 following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as the demonstrations during the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. During both escalations, federal troops were deployed to support local law enforcement in restoring order. Operation Garden Plot was not without controversy. Critics argued that the use of military forces in domestic affairs blurred the lines between civilian and military roles, raising concerns about the potential for abuse of power and the erosion of civil liberties. The operation's secrecy and the lack of transparency surrounding its protocols further fueled public skepticism. Civil rights advocates and activists voiced concerns that Operation Garden Plot could be used to suppress legitimate dissent and stifle free speech. These fears were compounded by revelations of surveillance and intelligence gathering efforts targeting various activist groups. Another plan developed by the United States to handle civil disturbances, major protests, or instances of widespread domestic unrest was Rex 84, also known as Readiness Exercise 1984. The plan was developed during the Reagan administration by Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The name Rex 84 comes from the exercise planned in 1984 to test its objectives. It's part of a broader set of continuity of government initiatives designed to ensure that the government could continue to function in the face of various crises. The exercise, conducted in April of 1984, involved 34 federal agencies and was intended to evaluate the government's ability to deal with civil unrest and to potentially detain large numbers of United States residents deemed to be national security threats in the event that the president declared a national emergency. The scenario involved rounding up undocumented immigrants as well as approximately 4,000 American citizens who the U.S. Attorney General had identified as national security threats. Once rounded up, they would be detained at previously designated military bases with assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, who, starting in 1981, began biannual joint exercises with the Department of Defense. Rex 84 became publicly known during the Iran-Contra hearings in 1987, when Congressman Jack Brooks questioned Oliver North about it. This led to concerns and speculation about the potential use of the military for domestic enforcement and the suspension of constitutional rights. Critics argue that plans like Rex 84 pose significant risks to civil liberties in the democratic process. The secrecy surrounding such programs has only fueled these concerns, leading to various conspiracy theories about government intentions.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was,
May I most
confirmation.
respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
The potential use of martial law and the suspension of the Constitution raises significant legal and ethical questions. The Posse Comitatus Act generally prohibits the use of military for domestic law enforcement, except in cases expressly authorized by the Constitution or Congress. Plans like Rex 84 challenge this principle by suggesting that in certain extreme circumstances, the military could be deployed domestically in ways that might circumvent usual legal safeguards. Supporters of such continuity of government plans argue that they are necessary to ensure stability and security in times of extreme crisis. They contend that without such plans, the government might be unable to respond effectively to severe threats, whether from natural disasters, terrorist attacks, or widespread civil unrest. Rex 84 remains a controversial topic in discussions about government preparedness, civil liberties, and the balance between security and freedom. While the intentions behind such plans may be rooted in a genuine desire to protect the nation, their potential implications for democracy and individual rights continue to be a subject of debate. Our last government program dates back to the 1960s, when the United States Navy began exploring the potential of marine mammals for military applications. The Marine Mammal Program began studies into the use of bottlenose dolphins as well as California sea lions to perform tasks such as mine detection and clearance, as well as equipment recovery. Early experiments focused on understanding the hydrodynamic properties of dolphins and their sophisticated sonar capabilities. These studies revealed that dolphins possess the ability to detect objects underwater using echolocation, making them ideal candidates for tasks such as mine detection and object recovery. In 1962, the U.S. Navy established a research facility at Point Mugu, California, to further study the sensory and physical capabilities of dolphins and sea lions. The program was later relocated to Point Loma in San Diego. Over the years, the program expanded to include a wide range of training exercises and operational deployments.
Here on the edge of the Pacific, some 50 miles north of Los Angeles, is the U.S. Navy base at Point Mugu, a major center for the Navy's space studies and missile experiments. It is also the location of one of the most fascinating experiments the Navy has ever launched, a program of studying dolphins.
Welcome aboard. Well, we're inviting you here at Point Mugu to see some of the progress made thus far in the extraordinary dolphin research program being conducted here under the direction of the Commander, Naval Ordnance Test Station, China Lake, California, in cooperation with the Commander, Naval Missile Center at Point Mugu. Now, dolphins have been living in the sea for 60 million years, but they are air-breathing, warm-blooded mammals, not fish. In fact, they're whales. The runts of the family is dwarfed by their mammoth cousins, the chihuahuas, to a Great Dane. Well, now, if you're wondering why the Navy is so interested in dolphins, the reason is quite simple. The dolphin is an expert on sonar, high-speed water travel, underwater communications, and maybe a number of things that the Navy is quite interested in.
In 1967, the program was classified and the Point Mugu facility was relocated to Point Loma in San Diego. In addition, a laboratory was established in Hawaii. In 1993, as a result of base realignments, the lab in Hawaii was closed and the animals were moved to the Naval Information Warfare Center in San Diego. Since the program's beginning in the early 1960s, it has evolved into an important part of naval operations. Animal teams have been used in conflicts such as the Vietnam War and Iraq wars. The program's stated objectives are protecting naval assets and ports, recovering training targets, as well as locating mines. There are 5 marine mammal teams, each trained for a specific mission type. Those include detecting and marking the location of floating sea mines, as well as mines which are on the seafloor or buried in sediment. A significant accomplishment came in 1965 when the Navy trained a dolphin to carry tools and messages and was successfully trained to guide lost divers to safety.
Here in these pools and lagoons and at other locations, an effort has been launched under the direction of Dr. William McLean, director of the program, to better understand the capabilities of the dolphin. The animals being studied are kept in comfortable living conditions, and the facility is equipped to meet all the test conditions the scientists need for their experiments. At times, as many as a dozen dolphins will be kept here, active in some part of the research program. We believe the dolphin is able to hear frequencies well above 100,000 cycles per second. These speakers being placed in the water by Dr. Johnson are used to transmit sound signals to Salty. When Salty performs the experiment properly, he is rewarded with a fish from this electronically controlled feeder. The electronic equipment is turned on, and the experiment is ready to start. To check Salty's hearing sensitivity, the dolphin has been trained to touch this lever when, and only when, he hears a tone in the water. If he responds correctly, he hears another signal giving him the good news, and then he receives a small fish from the automatic feeder. Salty is only permitted a few seconds after the tone is sounded to respond. If Salty pushes the lever at the wrong time, he hears a different signal, which indicates to him that he has erred, and he is punished by having to wait a few minutes before the next tone is sounded in the pool. Right and wrong responses are automatically recorded on counters inside the trailer. By varying the frequency and intensity of the tones sounded in the tank, and recording Salty's correct and incorrect responses, the scientists can determine how well the dolphin can hear at various frequencies. The Navy is using some of its most sophisticated high-frequency sonar equipment at Point Mugu to record dolphin sounds. Many thousands of feet of taped dolphin noises are stored in this sound library, and new recordings are being added daily. Does the dolphin adjust to its contact with man well enough to stick around when he could swim out to sea on other pursuits? We'll soon know, for Buzz Buzz is now ready for the big test. Her trainers have decided it's time to let her loose in the open sea. Hammock-like stretchers are used by the trainers to transfer the dolphins from pool to pool, and in this case, to remove Buzz Buzz from confinement in this tank and carry her to the edge of the open lagoon. The 300-pound dolphin is hoisted with a hand winch. Notice how passively she submits to this handling, never thrashing around or struggling. A big yellow float is now attached so Buzz Buzz can be seen in the murky sea water in which she'll soon be swimming. Every precaution is taken when handling the dolphin out of water. In its natural environment, the dolphin is all power and grace, but out of water it is helpless and easily injured. This will be the first time that Buzz Buzz has been loose in the open sea since she was captured well over a year ago. As she moves slowly away, does she realize she is free? She must, for look at her speed up and swim away from shore. Trainer Bob Bailey sets up the homing signal that Buzz Buzz has been trained to return to when she hears it sounded underwater. Now comes the crucial test. Will the months of careful training pay off? Will Buzz Buzz return when called, or will she, now that she knows she's free, keep right on going? Maybe back to the Gulf of Mexico where she came from. Bob Bailey presses the buzzer. Buzz Buzz heard it. She's hesitating. Is she undecided? She's coming back. Buzz Buzz has learned her signals well. She obviously has decided she likes it better here with her trainer companions, who always have a pocket full of fish.
The program was declassified in the 1990s, and despite its successes, the marine mammal program has faced criticism and ethical concerns regarding the treatment of the animals involved. Animal welfare advocates have raised questions about the conditions in which the marine mammals are kept and the nature of their training. The Navy has responded by implementing strict oversight and monitoring protocols to ensure the well-being of the animals. As technology continues to advance, there is ongoing research to explore alternative methods for performing the tasks currently carried out by marine mammals. For example, underwater drones and other robotic systems are being developed to potentially replace or supplement the use of dolphins. There have been several instances where dolphins were used during conflicts, such as the Vietnam War, as well as the 2003 Iraq War, where dolphins were used to help detect approximately 100 mines. Despite opposition to the program, the Navy has stated they have never trained marine mammals for attack missions against ships or people. Anyway, that's all I have for this episode. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, or write a review.
There is a signal broadcast every second of every day through our television sets.
Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes.
Science and technology are propelling us forward at accelerating rates.
Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.